Get away from her, Tasha. That's what he yelled, and the sound hit me harder than the bookcase I stumbled into when he yanked me back. 1 second, I was kneeling beside Lily, with a little wooden stick under her chin, to feel for vibration. The next, I was on the floor, with my cheek burning, and a room full of whispers nipping at my heels like tiny dogs that never learned manners. Graham Whitaker stood over me in that doorway, jaw-locked suit still carrying the smell of some boardroom, and he said, "You psychopath. You were choking my daughter," and I said, "No, sir," I heard her try. "Just listen," but he was already gathering Lily into his arms, while the staff crowded the hall and traded opinions like coupons, and the only order I got was, "Pack your things, be gone by nightfall, come near her again, and I call the police." Now here's the part you won't like, but you'll understand if you've ever known a truth you couldn't prove. 3 hours earlier, Lily's mouth had shaped a word, no sound, just air and intent, the shape of no. And something in me that had spent 3 years studying speech therapy before life punched a hole in my plans, woke up and said, "That child isn't mute, she's muzzled by fear, by bad certainty, by adults who like neat labels, you know what I mean." I sat on the guest house porch with my suitcase, a swollen cheek, and a shaky 30-second clip on a flash drive that wouldn't convince a courtroom, but was more than enough to keep a woman honest. Lily, mirroring my mouth, breath catching lips forming "don't," and the storm rolling in over the Hudson felt like a dare, like the sky itself was asking whether I was done, and I wasn't. The next morning, I cut across the gravel to the garage where Owen the driver was polishing the SUV, like it could reflect back a safer version of his job. I said, "And I need you to watch something." And he said, "If it's about Dr. Hart, you're aiming uphill. The man's a celebrity, and this house is built to protect him. Everything runs one way, toward the doctor, away from questions." And before I could shove the flash drive into anyone's hand, my phone rang. "Unknown number," a steady voice said. "Ms. Reed, this is Professor June Morales. You reached out to my research forum. Tell me what you've got." So I did. And when I finished, she said the sentence that split the day wide open. "From what you describe, the child isn't mute. She's been silenced. Can you get him on tape?" And I said, "I can try." So picture me in a borrowed blazer with a lapel mic tucked in my collar, slipping down a side hall I had no business knowing about. Dr. Sylvan Hart's office door was cracked. The man himself looked up with that TV smile meant to calm panicked parents and charm producers, a folder labeled L. Whitaker sat on his desk like a dare, and I said, "We need to talk," and he said, "You were terminated." "Ms. Reed," and I said, "I heard her try. She can hum. She can shape breathy consonants, and I think you know that." And the smile flickered, and another face showed up for half a second, cold, tired of being questioned, before he said softly, "Parents need answers, not hope." And I asked why he kept telling Graham to avoid second opinions, why the word permanent showed up in every summary, like punctuation, and he closed the file with 2 fingers and said, "He pays me for certainty, not messy maybes, that reopen grief. Leave before you make this worse for yourself." And my mic caught every syllable. I should have felt triumphant. I felt terrified because you don't celebrate with a live wire in your pocket. You just keep moving. And that night, I went back to say goodbye to the only person in that house who looked at me like I spoke her language. The nursery smelled like lavender. A lullaby spun in a small circle. On low, Lily sat on the rug with her blocks. I knelt and put a clumsy blue thread bracelet in her palm and said, "Hey, songbird, they think you can't talk. But I know different." And she looked at the bracelet, then at me, lips parting like a door on new hinges. "Tasha," she whispered, and I forgot how to breathe. "Say it again," I begged, quiet like a secret. "Tasha," clearer. And then the door creaked and Graham filled the frame, pale and rigid, I told you to leave, he said. You broke into my home, and I said. She spoke, she said my name, I recorded Dr. Hart. He admits he gives answers, not hope. He's been lying to you, and the man looked at the girl, then at me, then back at the girl. He knelt like a person who just remembered prayer. Lily, did you say a word? And she studied his face and made a decision about what kind of father she wanted. Daddy, she said, soft but steady. And I swear, the nursery changed shape, grief cracked down the middle, and a father crawled out. Within days, Hart walked out with security at his shoulders. No scene, no tantrum. Just the quiet end of a man who sold certainty like medicine. And Graham stood in the foyer with papers and apology. I was wrong, he said. Help me fix it. And I didn't make a speech. I made a list, real trauma-informed therapists. A hard look at the files, and inside Lily's folder, weeks 11 through 14 were gone. A sticky note in tidy handwriting said, prepare summary for father. Remove session logs, the locked cabinet coughed up encrypted drives, and at 2 a.m., with the house humming and my hands shaking, I recovered a single audio file static, then a small voice saying, blue truck, then a man cutting him off. That isn't speech. Don't confuse your mother. Click end. And I covered my mouth and let the shake happen, yeah. That happened. We took everything to people who could do something besides shrug. The county attorney, Professor Morales, a reporter who listened like a human. And then came court, cold air, bright lights, a room that makes you want to sit up straight and remember your own name. Graham went first and said I wanted an answer, more than I wanted the truth. And then it was my turn, and the defense tried to make me small, underqualified, emotional, and I let them because they don't know what to do when the person they're trying to shrink keeps talking. Anyway, I told the jury I didn't have letters after my name, but I knew the sound of a child trying and the price of being ignored. And the last witness was Lily, not for spectacle, but because sometimes truth needs a 5-year-old with a steady gaze. The prosecutor bent to the mic. Do you remember Dr. Hart? She nodded. Did he ask you to try words? She looked up at the ceiling like she was scanning clouds and said, he told me quiet was better, and the room went still, in a way that felt like history changing its posture. The law moved slow, the world moved fast, families came forward. Therapists who had been gaslit for years finally had proof. A local official who buried complaints resigned before someone could pry his fingers off the chair. And inside that big house, the nursery filled with good noise. Humming, counting, reading bad rhymes delivered with perfect courage. And I stayed not as help as family. We turned Hart's old wing into open door. Part therapy hub, part legal clinic, part place to cry without apology. And we started mailing little brave coins with star stickers to kids whose files were full of permanent, a silly thing maybe. But sometimes you need a small weight in your pocket to remind your spine what it's for. If the story ended there, you'd call it neat, and I'd call it dishonest. Because one night, an envelope with no return address landed on the desk. Inside were 3 old photos, Hart shaking hands with a stranger. Hart passing an envelope outside a brownstone, and in the third, a baby in a stroller, with eyes too much like Lily's time-stamped months, before her mother died. And Professor Morales looked at me and said, this smells like a pipeline. Free screenings, early grants, quiet agreements, a machine that rewards definitive diagnoses and punishes kids who complicate the narrative. And my old scream crawled back into my throat, not from fear, from purpose, because you can't unsee the shape of a system built to prefer silence. You can only point at it and keep pointing. Here's your win and your discomfort, both at once. Hart sat in a courtroom and listened to his own voice played back to him like a mirror that bites. His license got suspended, the state announced audits. People cried because it meant their kid wasn't impossible, just ignored. And then a donor tied to Hart's research waltzed in with a lawyer, a publicist, and a check with more zeros than a parade. We want to help, they said, and I asked, do you want to fix what you built or look generous on the way out? The meeting ended early, the check never came, I slept fine. These days, Lily reads about turtles and stubbornness. Graham asks questions like a student and not a king. Open door buzzes like a train station for small voices. And once a month we host First Words, where parents play the moment a child said something, after years of being told they couldn't. A teenager in a faded cap took the mic last time and said, I'm Noah. I like trucks, and I'm not a problem to be solved, and the room stood up like the floor was hot. Lily squeezed my hand and whispered, we're loud now. So tell me this, and don't be polite about it. Where's the line between truth and comfort in your world? Was Graham justified in throwing me out that day, or did grief become an excuse to stop listening? Is a famous doctor allowed to be wrong because he sounds certain? Or do we owe kids more than tidy labels that keep adults feeling safe? If you've seen a school, a hospital, a family, reward silence, say it out loud. Drop a comment, argue with me, teach me, and if you're with me, type, no more silence and tell me your story. I'll be in the comments listening the way someone should have listened to Lily the first time.